I pulled up to my son's driveway at 6:45 on a Tuesday evening with $62 in my wallet, and everything I owned jammed into the bed of a pickup truck that burned oil and needed new rear tires. 3 weeks before that, I had 4 restaurants, 31 years of work, 47 employees who counted on me showing up every morning before the sun did. I had a house in Fredericksburg I'd paid off 11 years ago, a good name in 3 counties, and a business partner I trusted with everything. Then it all fell apart in 6 days. My partner of 8 years, a man named Terry Hobbs who used to eat Sunday dinner at my table, had been running a wire fraud operation through our shared accounts for 14 months. By the time the FBI showed up at my door on a Wednesday afternoon, Terry was already on a flight to somewhere without an extradition treaty. The banks froze everything by Thursday. The IRS issued a lien by Friday. My attorney called Saturday morning to tell me there was nothing left to protect. I lost the house first, then the trucks, then the restaurants, one by one like dominoes. By the end of the 3rd week, I was sleeping on an air mattress in a storage unit on the edge of town, eating crackers and gas station coffee, wondering how a man could spend 3 decades building something solid and watch it dissolve in less time than it takes for a bruise to fade. That's when I drove to my son's house. Kaysen and his wife Priscilla lived in a development out past the bypass, one of those neighborhoods with gates at the entrance and every house the same beige brick colonial with a 2-car garage and a mailbox that matched the shutters. Nice neighborhood, quiet, the kind of place that costs more than it should, and both people in the house know it, and neither one says anything about it out loud. I'd helped them with the down payment, $42,000 4 years ago. Never asked for it back, never expected to. I knocked at 7 o'clock. Through the sidelight window beside the front door, I could see the two of them sitting at their dining room table under one of those Edison bulb chandeliers that cost $800 at a furniture store in the mall. They both looked up when I knocked. I watched Kaysen's face go still. Priscilla got up first. She walked to the door but didn't open it. She spoke through the glass, her voice just barely clear enough to reach me on the porch. "We know what happened, Milton. Kaysen told me you might come by." I pressed my palm flat against the doorframe. "Priscilla, I just need a few nights. That's all. Just until I can figure out the next step." She shook her head slowly, like she was turning down a salesman. "We can't bring that kind of energy into our home right now. Kaysen's in a sensitive position at work. The people he deals with, the clients he manages, appearances matter in finance. We can't have a situation like this attached to us." "A situation like this?" She said it the way you'd describe a backed-up drain. Kaysen appeared in the hallway behind her. He was still holding his napkin from dinner. He looked at me through the glass for a long moment, and something behind his eyes shifted, not toward compassion, just toward discomfort, like a man who's been asked a question he prepared for but still doesn't enjoy answering. "Dad, that was all, just my name." "Son," I said it straight. "I built 4 businesses from nothing. I paid your college tuition without complaint. I helped you buy this house. I never asked you for a single thing in 31 years. I'm asking you now. Just a few nights." "We've made our decision," Priscilla said, in the tone of a woman who had rehearsed it. "There are resources for people in transitional situations. The county has programs." Kaysen nodded. He actually nodded at that, standing there with his dinner napkin, like she'd said something reasonable. I stood on that porch for another minute. Some part of me kept expecting the door to open. It didn't. The lights in the kitchen went out first, then the hallway, then the dining room, all of it going dark like a film shutting off, and I was left standing in the glow of the motion sensor light above the garage. I made it back to my truck before anything broke in me. I drove until I found a Cracker Barrel on Route 17 with a big lot and no signs about overnight parking. I backed into a spot near the tree line and sat there for a long time, watching families come out with shopping bags and styrofoam containers of leftovers, heading back to homes where someone was waiting for them. The second night was colder than the first. I ran the engine in short stretches to keep the heat up and told myself I'd figure something out in the morning. I drifted off sometime around 2 and woke to rain tapping on the cab roof, a gray and shapeless hour that didn't feel like any time of day in particular. It was 4:15 in the morning when the headlights swept across my windshield. A black Lincoln Town car pulled into the row in front of me and the driver was walking toward my truck. I sat up fast, thinking it was a sheriff's deputy, but it wasn't. It was an older man in a dark uniform, very neat, moving with the kind of unhurried purpose that comes from decades of knowing exactly what you're doing. He knocked twice on my window. I rolled it down. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "I'm looking for Milton Graves." My full name. No one in that parking lot had any reason to know my full name. "That's me," I said slowly. "My name is Joseph. I work for Cordell Wainwright. Mr. Wainwright has been trying to find you for 10 days, and he's asked me to bring you to him tonight. He says time is a concern." I hadn't heard that name in over 20 years. Cordell Wainwright. "He's alive," I said. I didn't mean to say it out loud. "He is, sir, but not for much longer. He's at Mercy General, the private floor." Joseph paused. He said to tell you it's about his estate and that you're the only person he trusts to help him settle it. I grabbed my jacket and my folder of documents, bankruptcy papers, attorney correspondence, what was left of the paperwork of my life, and I got in the back of that car. The heat came on immediately. The seat was soft in a way I hadn't felt in weeks, and I sat there rigid for the first mile because if I let myself relax, I was going to fall apart completely. Joseph asked me quietly when I had last eaten a real meal. I told him I couldn't remember exactly. He nodded and pressed a button on the console and said, "Mrs. Patterson, we have Mr. Graves. Could you please have the kitchen put something together? We'll be there in 20 minutes." Someone I hadn't thought about in 2 decades had spent 10 days hunting for me across 3 counties, and the first thing they did was make sure I ate. The private floor at Mercy General looked nothing like the hospital where I'd sat with my own father when he was dying. No fluorescent flicker, no linoleum, no smell of disinfectant cutting through everything else. Quiet hallways, warm light, original photographs on the walls. Joseph led me to a room at the end of the hall and knocked softly. "Come in," came a voice from inside, thin but still present. Cordell Wainwright was 81 years old, and he looked it. He had shrunk into the bed in the way that very sick people do, everything pared down to the essential, but his eyes were sharp, dark and steady, watching me cross the room the way a man watches something he's been waiting a long time to see. "Milton," he said, and something in his face came loose with relief. "Mr. Wainwright." I stopped at the side of his bed. "I'll be honest with you, I don't know why I'm here." He smiled at that. "Sit down, son. I know you've had a hard few weeks, and I'm not going to waste what time we have." I sat. "Do you remember the 4th of July, 1993, he asked. "The Hargrove Foods Company picnic, down at the pavilion on the Rappahannock." I'd catered dozens of those corporate events in those years, when the restaurant was still just one location and I needed every side job I could book. The Rappahannock, the pavilion with the rotted dock. "I remember the location," I said. "I don't remember the specifics." "You pulled a man out of the water," Cordell said. "A young man who had walked to the end of that dock alone because he'd had too much to drink and didn't know the boards were soft. He went through and went under and couldn't get himself back up. He looked at me steadily. You jumped in, fully dressed, didn't hesitate." The memory came back in pieces, the commotion, the green-brown water, someone yelling. I'd gone in without thinking, found the man by the arm, dragged him to the bank. It had taken maybe 45 seconds. By the time people gathered at the edge of the dock, it was already over. "That was you," I said. "That was me." He let that sit. "I was 22 years old. I would have drowned, Milton. The current under that dock moves faster than it looks from the surface. You gave me my life," he paused. "I went on to use it. Wainwright Property Holdings. 1,100 residential units across the Mid-Atlantic, commercial buildings in 4 states, a development arm currently worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $340 million. The room was very quiet. "I've been watching your career for 30 years, he continued, quietly. "The way you built those restaurants, the loyalty from your staff, the reputation in the community. I was proud of you. And then I heard what happened. My investigators found more than bad luck, Milton. They found something much worse." He opened a folder on his nightstand and set it on the blanket between us. "Your business partner didn't target you randomly," Cordell said. "Someone helped him. Someone gave him access to your account structures, your vendor contracts, your insurance policy details. Someone explained exactly where the weaknesses were." He looked at me directly. "That someone was your son." I didn't move. "I need you to hear me clearly. I have documentation on every piece of what I'm about to tell you." The first set of documents was a series of emails between Kaysen and Terry Hobbs going back 26 months. Kaysen had been feeding Terry information about the business's financial vulnerabilities in exchange for a promised payment of $80,000 when the operation concluded. He had told Terry which accounts held reserve funds when quarterly taxes came due and how to time withdrawals to avoid detection, which vendors had the longest net payment terms and could be exploited. He had handed Terry the keys to everything I built for $80,000. I couldn't speak, I just kept reading. The second set of documents showed something older. 3 years prior, Kaysen had offered to help me modernize the restaurant's point of sale and bookkeeping systems. I remembered that summer clearly. He'd been unusually attentive, coming by the main location twice a week, patient with my questions about the software. I'd been grateful. I'd thought it meant something. He had installed remote access to the accounting backend. And for 3 years, in amounts small enough not to trigger any automated flag, he had been pulling money from the operating accounts. The investigators had traced $119,000 over 38 months. I set the papers down on my knee. "There's more," Cordell said quietly. "I'm sorry." The third folder contained documentation of a plan Kaysen and Priscilla had developed together. Once I was fully destitute, no income, no property, nothing, they intended to approach me with an offer of help. A room in their house, basic needs covered. In exchange, I would sign a durable power of attorney giving Kaysen authority over my financial and medical affairs. Priscilla had researched the process thoroughly. Her search history was in the file. At 62, with no income and no fixed address, such a petition would not have been difficult to make stick. They were going to put me in a box, keep me alive and keep me quiet and control every decision I made for whatever years I had left. And I had knocked on their door and asked them to help me. Why, I said, the word came out rough. Because they've been drowning in debt for 4 years, Cordell said. Over $200,000 between credit cards, a second mortgage they took against their house without your knowledge, and a failed private equity investment that collapsed 18 months ago. They needed money. They decided you were the solution. He held my eyes. They also decided you deserved it. Priscilla has told people for years that you were lucky in business, not skilled, that you were holding on to wealth that rightfully belonged to the next generation. They convinced themselves this was a correction, not a crime. I sat with that for a long time. Eventually, Cordell reached for a sealed envelope on the nightstand. His hands shook holding it out. "This is my will," he said. "I've had attorneys working on it for 4 months. My 3 children have spent the last 2 years treating me like an account balance. I don't say that with bitterness. It is simply the truth, and I have made my peace with it." He looked at me. "I'm leaving everything to you, Milton. The full estate, the holding company, the properties, everything." I opened my mouth. "Don't," he said. "Let me finish. My reasoning is settled, and I've thought about it far longer than you've been in this room. You never came looking for me, never tried to leverage what happened on that river. You pulled a stranger out of the water and then went back to your life. In 41 years, you never once treated what you did as a debt I owed you." He paused. "That is an extraordinarily rare thing, and you're going to need what I'm leaving you for what comes next." He asked me to witness the document. 2 nurses from the private floor came in as additional witnesses. The whole process took 11 minutes. When it was done, Cordell leaned back against his pillows and looked smaller than he had when I walked in. "One more thing," he said. 3 months ago, when I learned what Kaysen was planning, I started quietly acquiring his debts, the mortgage on his house, his credit card balances, the auto loan on Priscilla's car. He watched my face. He's been making his mortgage payment every month to a subsidiary of Wainwright Holdings. He doesn't know whose name is behind it. He's been paying rent, effectively, to the man he helped destroy. Cordell Wainwright died 49 hours later, on a Thursday morning, just after sunrise. I was in the chair beside his bed when it happened. He went quietly. The monitors slowed and then stopped, and the room simply became a room again. His attorneys filed the will that same afternoon. His children hired lawyers by evening. The legal challenges lasted 7 weeks. Cordell's team had anticipated everything. Medical evaluations, video depositions, a documented history of our connection across 31 years. The courts dismissed the last challenge on a Wednesday morning, and by Friday the estate was mine. I sat in a Hampton Inn room and tried to understand what that meant. On a Saturday in November, I drove back to Kaysen's neighborhood. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, looking at the house. The foreclosure papers were already drafted. 1 call to the estate attorney, and this would be over in 30 days. Criminal charges, career destruction, no father left to call on, all of it completely justified. I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Davenport instead. "Set a meeting," I said, "at their house. Tell them the mortgage holder has concerns about the account and needs to speak with them in person." That Saturday evening, I sat on Kaysen and Priscilla's living room couch in a charcoal blazer I'd bought that week, Mr. Davenport beside me with a briefcase across his knees. They had no idea who I was at first. I had lost 15 pounds since summer. I sat differently. I wasn't the man who had stood on their porch with a suitcase anymore. Then I said my name. Priscilla's hand went to her mouth. Kaysen's face went the color of old paper. "Hello, son," I said. "We need to talk." I laid every document on their coffee table, every email, every bank transfer, every page of the plan they had made. I did it slowly, methodically, giving each one time to land. I watched Kaysen's hands shake as he recognized his own signature. I watched Priscilla stop crying and start calculating, her eyes moving across the papers searching for an exit that wasn't there. "You are going to take everything from me," I said. "Not just the business, me, my ability to make a single decision about my own life. You are going to put me in a room in your house and manage me like a liability." Kaysen was crying openly. He kept saying he was sorry. He kept saying things had gone further than he meant. He said Priscilla had told him it would work, that he'd been so far under that he couldn't see straight, that he didn't know how to ask for help. "You knew exactly how to ask for help," I said. "You watched me not ask for it your entire life. You knew the door was open. You made a different choice." Mr. Davenport opened his briefcase and placed 2 documents on the table. "2 options," I said. "Option 1, everything in this folder goes to the district attorney this week. I foreclose on this house in 30 days. I call in every debt you carry. You face criminal charges, and you face them without a father, because that version of this story ends our relationship permanently and completely. Neither of them spoke. Option 2, I said. You sign a written confession of everything you did, which Mr. Davenport will hold, not file, as long as you comply with the terms. You sell this house and apply the equity toward what you owe me. You live on a budget I review quarterly. 70% of everything you earn above basic living expenses comes back to me until the debt is cleared. You each take on second jobs. And every month, every single month, you will write me a handwritten letter, not an email. A letter on paper, explaining what you did and what you've learned, and what you are actively doing to become different people. Kaysen looked up. For how long? Until I believe you, I said. They signed. I live in a house on Smith Mountain Lake now, outside of Bedford, Virginia. It's modest for what I can now afford, but I wanted something that felt like mine and not like an estate I was maintaining. There's a porch that faces east, and in the mornings the light comes off the water in a way that makes it hard to feel sorry for yourself. The first 3 letters from Kaysen were stiff and formal, the kind of writing you produce when you are performing remorse rather than feeling it. I read them, filed them, and didn't respond. The 4th letter was different. He wrote about a specific night when he was 9 years old. I had missed his school play because of a problem at the restaurant, and on the drive home he had sat in the back seat telling himself I didn't care about him, that the business would always come before he did. He wrote that he had carried that story his whole adult life without once questioning whether it was true. He wrote, I think I spent 20 years being angry at a version of you that I invented. I'm not sure I ever let you be real to me. I read that one twice. I'm not certain, Kaysen, and I will ever have the kind of relationship I spent 30 years quietly hoping for. Some things, once broken, heal in the shape of the break rather than the original form. But he is trying. I can hear it in the letters, month by month, the language shifting toward something more honest, something that costs him more to write. That cost is the point. I jumped into that river in 1993 without thinking about it. I didn't know I was changing the direction of 2 lives. I was just a man who saw someone drowning and didn't wait around to weigh his options. I've tried to make every decision since in the same spirit. It's harder when you can see what it cost you, but I think that's what makes it mean something. A choice that doesn't cost you anything isn't really a choice. It's just convenience wearing a better name. I'm still learning that. At 62 years old, on a porch by a lake in Virginia, watching the light change on the water and waiting every first of the month to see what my son has found the courage to say.